Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Friends in Fiction official book club discussion of, oh my gosh. I'm sorry,
We're
guys.
right out the gate.
I'm
Lisa's
losing
lost her
it.
composure.
Happy Monday, happy Friendsgiving and Thanksgiving week. And apparently it's Lisa's lost her mind night because my favorite person in the world is our guest tonight, and we're going to be discussing the sweetness of forgetting. So welcome, everyone. I'm here with Brenda, my beautiful co-host, and you want to go ahead and introduce my favorite person in the world?
Yes, great to be here because clearly we're so excited we can't wait. So yes, Lisa, thanks. I'm excited to introduce our guest author this evening, our Fab Four phenom, Kristin Harmel. She's a New York Times bestselling, USA Today, and #1 international bestselling author of The Book of Lost Names, The Winemaker's Wife, and a dozen of other novels that have been translated into 28 languages and sold all over the world. A former reporter for People magazine, Kristin began writing professionally at the age of 16 as a sports writer, covering Major League Baseball and NHL hockey for a local magazine in Tampa Bay. But she is and forever will be one of the Fab Four, our Friends in Fiction authors, podcasters, and hosts every Wednesday night. Welcome, Kristin.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
And we are so excited, as are our book club members tonight. We have had so much engagement and love and everything about this book. So we are really excited to talk to you about it.
I'm excited too. It's kind of cool to, being that it initially came out 10 years ago, like it's a really weird experience to be back talking about it. And I haven't really had that many tour dates for this one. So I'm really actually just super happy to be here tonight with this group talking about it. Cause I know you guys asked such good questions and, I don't know. I'm just excited. So thank you. Thank you for choosing the book and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Kristin. Well, I have to say, The Sweetness of Forgetting, it was just such an exquisite piece of writing and research, not just the historical events, which of course you're outstanding at, but it was the connection between the people and how the choices they made affected each generation that just drew me in. So really excited to talk about that. And I know our readers are too. So readers, book club members, if you have questions, please put them in the chat for Kristin and we'll see how many we get to. Note that we will be spoiler free until 7:15. We've moved that time up so we get more time for juicy spoilers. After that, you may hear spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, you should mute at that point. Speaking of not reading the book, Kristin, could you summarize The Sweetness of Forgetting in its 10th anniversary copy for those who may not have read it yet?
So this is the 10th anniversary edition, and it's so weird because
I'm going to hold up the old one.
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting though, because I've been seeing people post like, oh, I just got this, and they're posting the cover that you have, Brenda. And I think part of that is, so this is what the new one looks like, but Amazon still is selling copies of the old one. Like if you go to Amazon and you put in The Sweetness of Forgetting, that's the one that comes up, and you can't even navigate to the new one on your phone. Like, you can only do it from desktop. It's so annoying. I've taken this up with the public. Hopefully that'll get resolved. But anyhow, The Sweetness of Forgetting. I know, it's crazy. The Sweetness of Forgetting. This is the 10th anniversary edition. This was my first World War II novel, which I wrote, it came out about a little over a decade ago in August of 2012. But I probably began writing it in 2009 or so, when I was at the tail end of my chick lit career, which is how my career began. So it's my first World War II novel. It's a story, and it's kind of a novel that almost straddles the genres a little bit. Like now I'm very squarely writing World War II. Like I'm firmly in the World War II territory. This had like a foot in the women's fiction world, because that's or like the contemporary women's fiction world, because that's where I was coming from. So it's about a young woman named Hope. She's in her, I think she's 36. She's a bakery owner in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. She's inherited this bakery from her mother and her grandmother. She's kind of carrying on this family tradition. She doesn't really want to be carrying on this family tradition, but it's kind of what she feels obligated to do. She has a daughter named Annie. Hope is recently divorced. And her grandmother, who she loves very much, who she's very close to, has dementia. So what she knows of her grandmother is that her grandmother was Catholic, that her grandmother is French, that her grandmother had this great love story with her grandfather. But as the story opens, her grandmother is kind of slipping away due to dementia. And she begins saying things that don't add up to Hope's knowledge of what her grandmother's past was. And in a moment of what appears to be clarity, her grandmother one day gives her a note with a list of names and tells her she has to go to Paris to find out what happened to her family. So Hope goes to Paris, and in Paris uncovers this family history she never knew about. She discovers that her grandmother had this secret past buried in Holocaust-era Paris, and that there is a love story buried there too that she never heard about. So it has to do with family secrets. It has to do with World War II. It has to do with Alzheimer's. It has to do with the Holocaust, and it has to do with baking because the tradition of baking runs strong in their family. And at the beginning, to Hope, it's just this torch that she's carrying that she never really intended to carry. But through the course of the novel, I think that thread that runs through her family, she realizes means so much more. So that was my very not good elevator pitch speech about the.
Oh no, it's great.
That was perfect.
No, that was like this happens and then this happens and then this happens.
Well,
it was like that kind of a description.
It's not spoiler time yet, so you did great.
Yay.
So thanks so much, Kristin. And that leads us right into our questions selected in advance. Great. Lisa, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I do. We have a question from a special book club member. Her name is Nahama Tikva, and she's 10 years old, and she has read The Sweetness of Forgetting and The Forest of Vanishing Stars with her mom, Hannah.
Okay.
Who is also a book club member.
Yay.
And I'll ask the question, and then I have a cute picture I want to share.
Oh, yay.
And she loved them both, but her question is, as a participant in the NaNoWriMo Young Writers Program for the 5th year in a row, how do you develop? I know, she's so impressive.
That's incredible.
I know. How do you develop a storyline and stick with it? She keeps coming up with good ideas for multiple stories, and it interferes with her progress.
Ooh, that's such a great question. And definitely a question adult writers face too. That is certainly not, that's something all of us worry about. Okay, so 2 things. 1, to stay on track, I always write an outline first, and that's something you can do before NaNoWriMo begins. Perhaps that's not the most practical advice 2/3 of the way through November, but for future writing projects, I always do outline very heavily before I begin a book. That keeps me on track, and I give myself permission to steer away from the outline a little bit, as long as I know I'm coming back to it. So I think you have the outline kind of functions like a roadmap to where you're going, but you're allowed to take detours. So that's kind of how to stick with it on a path forward. But it is absolutely challenging when you get other ideas. And that happens to me too, especially at the beginning of a project. Well, no, let me backtrack. It's not the very beginning of a project. It's once you're a few chapters into it and you've started off with a bang, and you feel, those first few chapters pour out, and then you're like, now what? And it's that as soon as that now what question comes in, that those other ideas start kind of assaulting you. They're like, oh, choose me. And so I try, once I have committed to a project, which is what you have to do during NaNoWriMo, during National Novel Writing Month, you have to commit to one project and do it. When you have those other ideas, I just jot those ideas down and put them in a Word document that I promise myself I'm going to open the day that I write the end on the first draft of the project I'm writing. So you have to choose. Like, you might have an idea that's way better than the idea you're working on, but it might not really be way better. It might just be the shiny new thing. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes when you're in the middle of writing something, it gets hard. And so the thing that you haven't started yet doesn't seem like it's going to be hard. And you forget that that's going to be hard when you get to chapter 6 too, right? So I think when you have a new idea, when you're working on something, you write it down, you put it away, and you let your mind work on it, but not actively. Because if you let your mind work on it actively, it's like flirting with somebody else. You know what I mean? Like just let it be. You can get to it later. That was an excellent question.
Okay. Yes. And here they are. There's Nahama and Hannah together. And
I
they
love
both
that, and
are
their
big.
cats.
They're
That's-
both big Kristin Harmel fans. So
That is
hello,
awesome.
ladies. Thank you for
Hi,
your
ladies.
question.
Thank you. And so good luck with the rest of NaNoWriMo. And thank you for the awesome question. That's amazing that she's starting so young. That's awesome.
I know. I
Good
was
for
like,
her.
oh my
For the
gosh,
5th year.
I know,
Wow.
that's incredible.
she's impressive.
She really is.
We can't wait to read your book one day.
Seriously, you guys are going to have her as a book club guest. We'll have to have her on our show.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm going to follow up with the next question, but first I wanted to read this comment because I just feel like it sums up what a lot of people feel about Kristin's work.
Oh,
Susan Seligman
I love
says,
Susan.
I'm the proud owner of both copies of this amazing book,
Aw.
the original and the anniversary edition. I reread the book and it resonated with me on so many levels. Love the generational aspect, 3 generations of strong females, the dementia storyline, heart-wrenching for me as my dad, aunt, and paternal grandmother all struggled with this horrible condition. And of course, the World War II aspect of the book. I learned so much, as I always do from Kristin's book, and I'm so grateful for all of her amazing and meticulous research. I just want to say thank you, Kristin, for sharing this incredible story with us.
What a nice comment. Thank you so much.
So,
Thank you.
I think Susan summed it up well, but her question is this,
Susan.
and you touched on it earlier, but since this was your first historical fiction
Yeah.
novel, how did you come up with these aspects that made the book come alive? And when did you know that this is the genre where you belong?
That's such a good question. I had no idea what I was doing when I started this because the World War II wasn't really a genre yet. I mean, there were people writing about World War II, but it wasn't what it is today. Like and certainly not about France. I think there was one World War II book I'd read about France that was kind of in this genre, and it was Sarah's Key. And I'm not saying there weren't others, but that was the only one that I was familiar with at that time. So I really didn't know what I was doing. I had lived in Paris in my early 20s, before I had even written it's actually where I wrote my first novel, which was a chick lit novel. I sold my first book when I was 24. It came out, I think, when I was 26. And, I wrote what I thought I was supposed to be writing at the time. It was the age of chick lit. It was the age of Bridget Jones's Diary and The Devil Wears Prada and The Nanny Diaries and all of that. And I was this young woman, this single woman in my 20s. I was a journalist. I was trying to find my way. The greatest compliment anyone ever paid me was if someone said, "Oh, you're just like Carrie Bradshaw." I'm like, yes, I am. Like, that was kind of who I was. That was, almost 20 years ago. Although I still like to think of myself as Carrie Bradshaw. I hope that's okay. But so I wrote 4 chick lit novels and 2 young adult novels. And the more I wrote, the less I felt like I fit in that genre. They were kind of romantic comedies, and I'm not very funny. Like, I'm just not a funny writer. That's just not who I am. And like, there are so many people who were doing it better, and I didn't like, it just never felt like the right fit for me. And as I got older, I was like, this isn't where my life is supposed to be going. So, having lived in Paris, I had been really surprised by the amount of Holocaust history that had taken place there that I didn't know. And I think that was the first nudge in this direction. Another nudge in this direction was I was writing for People magazine during that time. And my favorite story I ever did for People in my 12 years of reporting for them was about a Holocaust survivor named Henry Landworth. And Henry, I could tell you a whole lot about Henry, but you've probably heard me talk about him before. But the thing that stuck with me most after talking to Henry was that he talked about so he had survived 5 years in concentration camps during his teenage years. He was 13 to 18 in concentration camps. And he talked about, in order to survive, he had to turn his feelings off And when the war was over, he never for the rest of his life knew how to turn them back on again. And I was so struck by that idea of having to lock your feelings away in order to move forward in the short term, and the idea of that doing irreparable damage to you in the long term. So that actually became, I think that those words of Henry's really stayed with me, and they became the core of Rose's character in this book. So those were some of the elements that went into it. But when I first had the idea of writing this World War II book set in Paris, I had a completely, like, the core was the same. Rose was there. Rose had a granddaughter. She had a love with this guy, Jacob, who had disappeared. But in that original version of the book that I had, Rose had become an extra in movies, and Jacob found her. Jacob was still alive, and Jacob found her through realizing that she was still alive because he saw her in the background of a movie. So it was completely different. Like dementia was not an element of it. Or maybe I can't remember whether it was or not, but certainly the Grand Mosque of Paris and like the Muslim connection was not an element of it. But as I began to research, I came across that element, that religious element, which felt so important and so like natural to weave into the plot, that became a big part of it. And then also, while I was beginning to write the book, my grandmother wound up having dementia, and she began kind of slipping away more and more rapidly. And so that became something that became a part of the book too, because it was very much a part of my life at the time. I was losing my grandmother in very much the same way that Hope is losing hers. So those were kind of some of the things that led me to the book. And as far as knowing that this was where I belonged, it took me a couple more books. I wrote this book. I thought that was amazing. Now what do I do? And the next book I wrote was not about World War II. It was The Life Intended. And I'm very proud of that book. I loved that book. It's a contemporary novel. I still love that book. It's still one of my favorite books I've ever written. But the whole time I was writing The Life Intended, I just kept feeling this pull back to the research. And the book I wrote after that was World War II, and I've never stopped. So I don't know. It feels like where I fit.
You definitely fit, and you own it. You're
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of your chick lit books too, because the art of
I
French
know
kissing.
that's where we met. We
know,
met through the art of French kissing, right?
That will always hold a special place in my heart.
Thank
So
you.
I love
not a real how-to guide, I should say. Not a real how-to guide. I don't really know. I mean, I like to think I'm good at that, but not good enough to write a book.
Well, we are almost ready for some advanced questions, but I did want to ask you one quick question about one theme in the book that you just touched on a moment ago.
Sure.
And that is, I found it to be so fascinating the way Hope in this story, her baking connects her unknowingly, of course, to generations of women in different countries and different faiths. In fact, the baked goods are the very things that allow Hope to piece Mamie's story together in France. And I've never thought of food this way. Yeah. So I was wondering what made you think of this as an element?
I think in a lot of families, stories aren't necessarily spoken out loud, but traditions are passed down. And I think sometimes when you can't say your stories aloud, or when you've chosen not to say your stories aloud, you're still sharing them with the generations to come in those traditions. So sometimes it's cooking, sometimes it's the songs you pass down, sometimes it's the fairy tales you pass down. But your family traditions are hidden there. Your family traditions are laced into all of that. And, I don't know that necessarily directly came from my life, but I will say that, my grandma and my grandpa on my mom's side, who I was very close to, didn't really talk a lot about that period of their lives. I mean, they were both young adults during World War II. My grandfather was in the Merchant Marines. My grandmother was just here in the States. But, I have always wished and still wish that I had asked them more questions about how that period of time impacted them. But I could tell you everything about what they did in the kitchen. I mean, I smell frying bacon, and my grandfather's there with me. I smell Spam on a skillet, and my grandfather's there with me. Someone fries me potatoes, and my grandfather's there with me. Someone makes shadow squares, which was one of my grandmother's recipes. It was like this recipe with with chocolate chips and like a brown sugar meringue on top. Like I have those, and I'm in my grandmother's kitchen again. And I think a lot of people can identify with that, with being left with those traditions without those stories. But I think we don't stop and think that those traditions are often, or those stories are often buried in those traditions. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So, Lisa, do we have questions from the chat?
Oh, we do. The chat is exploding
thought we
with
would.
questions and hearts and comments. I can barely keep up. So Debbie Stone wants to know,
Debbie.
do you remember what other titles you had for this book, or was The Sweetness of Forgetting always the title?
No, The Sweetness of Forgetting was not the title. And to this day, it's not, I don't dislike the title, but it's not a title I love.
I like it.
My working title for this book was The Blue Hour, because that is the hour. That's what it's called in French. My French pronunciation is terrible, but it's l'heure bleue, like the blue hour, which is the term for that hour of twilight when the sky turns that beautiful, like deep blue color, just as like the sunset is seeping into the horizon. And that's the hour in the book where Rose, the grandmother, sits at her window and waits for the stars to come out, which has special meaning to her because she's named some of the stars after the people she lost. So that's a very important hour to her. But l'heure bleue in French is also the term for the end of innocence before the First World War. So it's basically when France lost its innocence. France was, which is kind of silly because France was always at war even before that. I don't know. Like, I don't know why we're considering that it's so innocent, but that is kind of like the eve of the First World War, like the time that everything changed. L'heure bleue, like the anyhow. So that was the title I loved for this book, and that was the title that was used a few places around the world. But the title that was used most places around the world was As Long as There Are Stars in the Sky, which is something that when they're young, Jacob says to Rose. Jacob says to Rose, as long as there are stars in the sky, I will love you. And As Long as There Are Stars in the Sky became the title most of the places. Like I pulled a couple just a minute ago, I pulled these down from my shelf so I could show you. So this was actually the German cover. And
oh wow.
Solange am
I love
Himmel
it.
Solange am Himmel Sterne stehen. I'm probably saying that wrong too. Although I actually went to Munich for like when this book came out. They brought me over, and I had to record a TV commercial where I had to read the title of the book, and I had to do like 50 takes because they were like, no, that's not it. And I would like say it again. They're like, no, you pronounced that word wrong. I'm like, I'm terrible at this. But that means As Long as There Are Stars in the Sky, and that was the title a lot of places. So
wow.
And I like that a lot, but it just wouldn't have worked here, So I think they also chose here to position it not as a World War II novel, which you can tell. Brenda, I know you have the book, but the old cover doesn't scream World War II. It doesn't look like a World War II book. It looks like a Cape Cod beach read, right? This looks more like World War II. This says, or at least it looks more like Paris, right? Like it at least suggests World War II. But I think that was part of the reason for the title, is they were kind of leaning in that sort of direction. So yeah. Wow. I also, while I have, just because I have my lap full of these, I also wanted to show you, this is, I think this is the book in I think it's Taiwan. No, I think it's Taiwan.
Oh,
yeah.
So interesting.
Cool? Yeah.
I should have brought mine. I have one I didn't think about it. It's like Taiwan or Japan or something where it's backwards.
Backwards. Yep. That one.
Yeah.
And I've got I have a ton of others. I just don't know where they are because they've all been replaced. I mean, there's somewhere. I've just replaced them over the years with the more recent books on my shelves, but those were a couple.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of comments I'd like to read. Patty Callahan Henry says, The Blue Hour, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And hi, Meg. Meg is watching also, and she said hello.
Oh, hi, Meg. Hi, Patty. I know them.
And I just lost the question oh no, sorry. Okay. We have had quite a few questions about the recipes in the book. So they'd like to know what's your favorite recipe and also what is your family's favorite recipe? Did they have fun
Yeah.
being taste testers for any of it?
So I wrote this book I think I wrote this book before I started dating Jason, my husband. I did. So they did they did taste test the 3 new recipes, because there's 3 new recipes in the back of this. And they are probably sick of those 3 new recipes because I did so many versions of them. I'm like, how's this? How's this? They were probably like, stop baking like these weird random things. But as far as the other ones, so I did write all the recipes myself. The ones that are from that are supposed to be part of Rose's heritage were inspired by me going to Paris specifically to eat pastries. I mean, that was what that research trip was about. I spent some time at the Holocaust Museum there, but the majority of that trip was just walking around Paris, eating pastries and talking to people about the pastries so that I could come home and recreate the pastries. So there actually is,
Tough job.
Tough job. So for those of you who have read it, you know that the Grand Mosque of Paris plays a role. And in the book, Hope actually goes into the bakery at the Grand Mosque of Paris, searching for this connection to her past. Well, that's real. Like, there really is a bakery at the Grand Mosque of Paris. It's open to the public. It has these incredible North African pastries from Muslim heritage. It's really, really, really awesome. So some of the recipes were kind of connected to that. Some were connected to some of the Jewish bakeries in Paris. But all of them were things I just came home and created in my own kitchen when I was living by myself, when I was single, and when I probably gained 10 pounds because I was just sitting there eating everything that I baked. Yeah, I didn't meet Jason until after this book was already on its way to publication. That's not true. I didn't start dating him. I knew him before that because we had mutual friends, but we didn't start dating. So he did not benefit from any of the taste testing early on. But as far as my favorite recipe, I like the Cape Codder cookies, I think. I like the North Star Bakery cupcakes just because I was in like a real cupcake phase when I was writing this book. So I've kind of a little bit outgrown the cupcake phase, but like I still appreciate a good cupcake. So I really like those. And then the only recipe I think that I didn't make up that just came from something in my own family was the overnight meringues. So my grandmother used to make those. They're the simplest recipe, but she made fun of me like the whole rest of her life because when I was little, really little, I would go to her house and I would say, do you have any of those little white things? And she always had one for me, a little meringue. So she'd put one in one hand and I'd say, how about one for the other hand? And I'd put my hand out. So that's like a family memory that's embedded in those baked goods for me.
I love that.
A great negotiator even then.
How about one for the other hand? Exactly.
I have one comment I'd like to share before I'm going to switch back to Brenda because I know she's got some more advanced questions. Mary Vasquez says, twilight is also the time of day dementia sufferers start to become less coherent. It's called sundowning, so that's another reason it would have been an appropriate title.
That is so true. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yep. Good point, Mary.
Amazing. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Kristin, we have another comment and a question from Leslie Bodeman. And her comment is, I'm reading The Sweetness of Forgetting now and fell in love with Rose, Hope, and even little Annie immediately. But her question is, she would like to hear your engagement story that you mentioned in the author's note and that you told at book events.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see this. Hold on. Sorry, I have like there's like a COVID vaccine sticker on this. Let me show you. Can you guys see this? This was Yeah, this is so this was like the Eiffel Tower behind us. This is my husband.
Oh,
And this is
Aw.
me. Okay, yeah. So I was in France. I was in Europe in 2012 promoting The Sweetness of Forgetting. I had been to England, I had been to Spain, and I got really sick. I had the flu or something awful. I had like a really high fever. I was throwing up. This is like not a good part of the story. I don't know why I'm telling you that part of the story. But I was like super sick. And so I like was finally over being sick, but I still felt like gross. You know how you feel after you like you just finished having the flu for several days and you're just so
Yeah. Ugh.
depleted and you feel yucky. So I was flying to see my friend Lauren in Paris. She's who I lived with in Paris. And so the apartment where Rose lives in Paris with her family, and therefore the apartment that Hope, walks by and says like, my grandmother used to live there, was actually my old apartment, the apartment where I lived in Paris, with my friend Lauren, in our early 20s. So we had shared this apartment. This was outside the apartment. So you can see the Eiffel Towers at the end of our street. I'll have to share a picture from our kitchen. You can see it from the kitchen window. You can see it from the living room window. You could also see it from the bathroom window. So little hint, which I learned the hard way. If you can see the Eiffel Tower out of the shower, they can see into the shower, just in case you ever wondered. If you put the little coin in the binoculars and look, you can actually look into our shower. So I realized that too late, but anyhow, that was our apartment. That was our apartment that summer. So I went to visit Lauren in Paris, and I got there. I was late. Like our flight was late. It was before my cell phone. It was back in 2012, so my cell phone didn't work in France. I couldn't find her at the restaurant. It was this whole thing. And by the time I got there, I was just so exhausted. And I was like, let's have a quick meal and just go back to your apartment. I feel awful. I just want to go to sleep. I'll be myself tomorrow. And she was like, no. We have to walk by the old apartment. I was like, Lauren, like, let's just do it tomorrow. I I have all my bags with me from the airport. I felt awful. She was like, no, it has to be tonight. And I was like, no, like, we'll just go tomorrow. The apartment will still be there tomorrow. She's like, it's so beautiful at night. I'll drag your bags. We're going. And I was like, what is wrong with her? So I was like, all right, I guess it's really important to Lauren to go see our old apartment. I was like, fine. So we walked down the street, we through the old neighborhood to the old apartment. And I was like, yeah, I'm glad we came. This was really nice. And like, I turned around to say that to her, and she's like nowhere to be seen. Like, she's not next to me anymore. So I turn around and I'm facing the Eiffel Tower, and this man comes walking toward me, and I'm like, that looks just like Jason. But that's impossible because Jason's at home in Florida. I just talked to him yesterday and he's not here. And so I turned around to tell Lauren, I think I'm hallucinating. My fever must be back. But it was Jason. And so Jason had flown, he had used a flight attendant friend's pass, had flown to Paris. He had no idea how to get around the city. He'd only been to Europe once before. And he had arranged it with Lauren and found his way to this block, and got down on one knee. And he had been waiting for so long because we were so late that he had talked to people in the building and told them what he was doing. And so he proposed with a line from The Sweetness of Forgetting. He proposed with that line, as long as there are stars in the sky, I will always love you. Oh. And because he had told people in the building, they had spent an hour cutting out construction paper stars. And so when I said yes, people on the balconies above dropped stars down. So we like star confetti down on us. And like the Eiffel Tower was behind us. Yeah. And that was my proposal story.
Oh my gosh.
It would have been better if I didn't feel nauseous and sick, but
But see, now you remember the good part.
I do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so beautiful.
It was very sweet. Yeah. He definitely wins for like excellent proposal.
Yeah. That story. So it just never gets, I can listen to it a lot.
I know, right? It's like,
thanks.
You give us single ladies hope, Kristin. I don't know if there's guys like that out there right now. If they are, hello.
Yes.
Call Lisa.
I didn't think I'd find somebody like that though. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I never had the best dating luck prior to him. So yeah.
Well, speaking of hope, you like that transition?
Good transition.
I see what you did there.
Speaking of hope, Hope and her daughter Annie, because we were way past the spoiler time for the discussion, by the way. So Hope and Annie have a very kind of difficult relationship at the beginning of the book, and as it progresses. How did you navigate that as you were trying to develop the story?
I think it's something I probably would have done with more finesse if I'd written the book 10 years later. I think that the way I wrote that story, the relationship between the two of them could have benefited from some maturing of me as a person and a writer. But I will say that I think it came from a really honest place. Annie is very much, in a lot of ways, me. As my parents got divorced when I was about that age, and I remember blaming a lot of it on my mom. And I think it was because I knew my mom would take it. Like I knew I could take things out on her and she wouldn't go anywhere. And I think I worried. I think I was really worried that if I expressed a lot of anger to my dad, he wouldn't love me anymore. Like I don't know. Like I was in a really weird place about that. And then none of that was correct. It was just the way I was thinking about it when I was that age. And I think that Annie is very reflective of that. Like her belligerence toward her mother, I think, is an expression of her hurt. And I think that comes very much from the regrets I had about treating my mother that way. And I don't think I was quite as bad as Annie. I mean, Annie's really kind of a real pill to her sometimes. But I don't think that psychologically that's an uncommon thing to do, to kind of to lash out at the parent who you're with more, because you don't know how to process those feelings yet. So that's kind of at the heart of that relationship. And I think I was trying to look at it from the I understood it from the perspective of Annie, but I think I needed to understand it as I was writing it from the perspective of Hope, of like how painful that would be, and how painful it must have been for my mother to not only be dealing with all the feelings that go along with a divorce, but then to have your child lashing out at you and acting like she blamed you. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where it comes from. It was kind of a very personal part of that story for me.
Oh, but that is a very natural thing
Yeah.
to do for the child, to lash out at the safe person.
Yep.
But also,
Yeah.
the neat thing about Annie is the relationship she has with her grandma and and her great grandma, I guess,
Yeah.
and how much faith she has in her, and so that's like a silver lining in the story.
I think I always thought that was Annie. That was who Annie really was. Do you know what I mean? Like the behavior that she had toward her mother was at her core, right? Like because her relationship with her great grandmother wasn't complicated by whatever was going on in the divorce. So like that was who Annie was. But in her relationship with her mother, there was so much pain there because of what Annie was going through, and she didn't know how to vocalize. That Hope unfortunately kind of got the raw end of that deal, or the just the difficult end of that. So I don't know. I've had people say to me like, "Oh, like Annie, I didn't like Annie," and I'm like, I just think Annie's real. You know what I mean? Annie's what 12 or 13-year-old is behaving perfectly with the perfect handle on her emotions. None of us. I certainly wasn't at that age. I can barely behave adequately now. Never mind when I was 12 or 13.
Well, particularly with your parents going through a divorce and the whole situation, that was a very realistic choice. But I know Lisa has some questions too, so I'll stop there.
I do. Our friend Patty Callahan Henry wants to know, would you say it's the book that changed your career path?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Not just my career path, but my life. I mean, but not just as a writer, but as a human. I think there's something really extraordinary about finding where you fit. And that's what happened to me with this book. And I'm still, I'm not, it's not like I wrote this book and then I was like, well, that's it. Like the rest of my life is easy. Like there's still a million things to figure out. But I think when you take that turn and you're like, oh, wait, like this is how it's supposed to feel. You know what I mean? That opens a lot of other doors to you. I think it opens a lot of doors in terms of your comfort with yourself, your comfort with other people, your belief in yourself. And so this was really the book that did all of that. And that honestly, that taught me that I could do more than what I had been doing, but also more than what people had been telling me I was capable of doing. Because that was another thing. When I had the idea for this book, I was basically told, like, like, you can't write that because it's not a Kristin Harmel book, because like I was writing these light romantic comedies, which I understood, but I was like, okay, well, I'll do it under a pseudonym then. And then it was like, actually, we don't think you could write this. Like, it was really very much like, we do not think you're capable of this. And so to have taken that leap to say, I think I am capable of this and I want to try. To do that and then to succeed in that taught me a lot about following my heart, which I think has served me well in the 12 years since then, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And to those people who said you couldn't do it,
yeah, I mean,
look at her now.
I think I'm doing it okay.
I was afraid we were.
She did it. She owned it. And yeah, I have some choice words that I'll keep to myself.
That's why I was bleeping.
Brenda's ready for the censor button. We've had quite a few questions about the re-release, the 10-year anniversary, and your thoughts about. Anissa would like to know if you thought about adding any chapters to it, but we've also had questions like if there's anything that you wanted to change or anything that you wished you changed in the new version.
I'm probably fortunate that they told me I couldn't change that much, because I think I would have rewritten the whole book. I mean, and I think it's an okay book for what it is. I mean, it's a book that you have to understand. I wrote 10 years ago when I was, at a very different point in my life, or 12 years ago, at a different point in my life, a different point in my career, and a different point in the evolution of the genre of World War II, right? So like everything about the book was just different. So if I'd had this idea for a book today, this would have turned out to be a very different book. So in a way, it was a blessing that they said to me, here's the manuscript. You can go through it. You can change things, but you can't change anything about the plot. You can't change anything. Like, you can't add anything. Like, you can't do anything that's going to change the page count. You can't do anything that's going to change it substantially. So which was good. So I went through and I caught things that I had, just with a fresh eye that I hadn't caught 12 years ago. There were a lot of repetitions in there, like repeated words that, and that happens with every single manuscript I turn in. I'm sure I could pick up any of my books that's more than like 3 or 4 years old and read it again and be like repetition, just words I repeat. But to do that with a totally fresh eye 12 years later, I was able to eliminate some of those. I was able to eliminate a lot of the likes that Annie says. We were talking about that before we went on. Annie says the word like a lot, which was not unrealistic, particularly for 2009, 2010 when I was writing it. A lot of teenagers said the word like a lot. I say the word like a lot. It's a space holder for me. It fills space. And I do think now, but particularly then, the word like was something that a lot of teenagers, or young preteens relied on. But it made the book feel dated, and it made Annie's speech sound a little too exaggerated. So I was able to scale back on some of that without losing them. Annie still says like, it's just not quite as often. So I was not allowed to add any chapters. I was not allowed to change the plot at all. So the only thing I really added was an author's note. It didn't have an author's note before. So I added an author's note, and then I added the 3 new recipes. So that was pretty much it, but it was a challenge to go through it and to see, as I was reading through the book, to see things I would have done differently, but that I was not allowed to do differently because those parts of the book were already set in stone. It's a very weird feeling to look at something you wrote a long time ago, to realize that you've evolved, and to realize that you can't evolve the book with you, because it would not be fair to the book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would totally change it, but I have to say, you said it's an okay book for when it was, or I don't remember but it was still an amazing book.
Thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
the things about World War II that it illuminated,
Thank you.
and about the history that was lost and the generations that were lost, it was still just breathtaking.
Thank you. I appreciate
And
that.
so don't take that away.
Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I think it's that feeling though that most authors, I think a lot of authors feel like this about their books, and not necessarily even books 10 years ago or at the beginning of their career writing about those things. I think you look back at books that are 1 or 2 or 3 years old, and once you have that distance from them, you can see with clarity all the things that you could have and perhaps should have done differently. And that's, I think, why it's really difficult. Like, I don't usually go back and read my books. It's hard for me when I do, because I don't see it's hard to see the good things. It's a lot easier to be self-critical and say like, oh, I should have done this differently. I should have said that differently. I should have done this with the plot. So I guess I'm saying a weird blend of things. I do feel really proud of this book. I feel like there are a lot of things that are really good about it at its core. But I also acknowledge that I was writing it as a writer who was 30, who still had some growing up to do. And I'll probably feel like that 10 years from now about, The Forest of Vanishing Stars or the Book of Lost Names or the Paris Daughter. It's just, you keep, but I think if you feel like that, that means you're doing it right, because you should keep evolving as a writer and as a human being, and you should keep growing and keep getting better. And that's my goal. So hopefully I'll be looking back in 10 years and thinking of all the things I should be doing differently with my current books.
Well, our chat has exploded with more than okay. It's remarkable. It's an amazing book, a masterpiece. So you have a lot of people that love
That's really
this
nice.
book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Jennifer would like to know, what draws you to writing about World War II and the Holocaust? Do you see yourself writing about a different historical event or time?
So what draws me to it? I mean, I think it's a number of factors. As I mentioned, I think one of the things that drew me to writing The Sweetness of Forgetting was that interaction with Henry Landworth, who was a Holocaust survivor. He was the first Holocaust survivor I really got to know. I had been obsessed with the Diary of Anne Frank when I was a young teenager. I think that's the way a lot of people find themselves drawn to World War II. My dad's side of the family, the heritage on that side is Eastern European Jewish and French. My dad's grandmother is from France. And I think that it's a portion of me that is just digging a little bit deeper into that part of my family heritage that I don't know as much about as I would like to. So I think that's a part of it. But I think it's also just that I'm fascinated by the research. I mean, like I said, I wrote The Sweetness of Forgetting, and then the book I wrote after that was not World War II, and I missed writing about World War II. I love the research. I think it feels very relevant today. And I'm really drawn to those stories of light in the darkness. We've certainly talked about that before with the Book of Lost Names, with the Forest of Vanishing Stars, with some of my other books. I feel like that's a phrase I say probably too often. But I think that really has great meaning to me, the ability to find light in the darkness. And that was one of the very dark periods of time in our modern history. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to me to set stories during that time period, to that backdrop, when the course of the war really did change based on ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I think I'm just really drawn to that idea. So that's, I think those are some of the elements that draw me to it. What was the second half of her question about? Oh, would I write in a different time period?
Yeah. Or a different historical event?
Yes. I mean, I'm branching out of it, like in The Paris Daughter, my book that comes out in June, it's set partially during World War II and then partially in 1960. So that was kind of my first experience writing a historical time period that wasn't World War II. Half of the book, or about little less than half, is set in 1960. I'll probably do more of that, where there's still a foot in World War II, but more of the story takes place in a different time period. It's hard to say beyond that. I mean, the next book I'm writing is a little bit World War II, a little bit modern day. I don't know what's going to come after that. I feel like there are still World War II stories to be told. I feel like they're still really relevant. I still feel like I feel like they still feel very modern, but I don't know that they're going to feel like that 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And so I'm just, I don't know. We'll see what the future brings. But I think at the core of my stories, hopefully, will always be that sense of finding light in the darkness, whatever time period that's in. So I think that's the thread that'll run through, even if I wind up not writing about World War II anymore.
Wow. You know, the thing that's amazing to me, you said there's still stories to write. And that's what's so amazing to me is, as someone who probably should know more about World War II, but I don't, when I read this type of, when I read your books, I learn so much. And it has a power to educate and move people in a way that, nonfiction does not. And so it's just amazing to me, like the way that can be conveyed in fiction.
I agree. I mean, and I think that's one of the things I like about reading World War II fiction also, or any kind of historical fiction. I like doing research. I like reading nonfiction, but I think the stories that stick with you are the ones that enter through your heart. Like, to me, that's the path to your brain that sticks. You know what I mean? If you just absorb the facts through your brain, like, okay, they're up there and they get filed away with like how to do addition. You know what I mean? Like, they're just facts that you know. But like, if you feel those facts on the way in, I think you remember them differently. And, maybe they slightly change the way you return to your daily life, because you've absorbed something about the past that maybe can help you to live a better future,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question, and I'm kind of cutting right to the chase here as far as the plot is concerned. So let me first say, big spoiler alert. Do not listen further. But I have to ask, because there were so many like pivotal parts to this book where, especially with Hope piecing together this story. But I just have to ask, as a reader, when I feel like I should whisper it, when
we are free. We are spoiler time. It is good.
It still doesn't feel right to say it out loud. When Rose passes away, a little bit of my heart just went as well. And then after all of those years, when Jacob passed away, almost immediately after that, I just don't know. I mean, it was a double punch. So how difficult was the decision to have that be the end? Well, not the end, but to be that the culmination of that reuniting. And did you consider anything else?
No. Sorry, Lisa, I just assumed you had disappeared to go sob off screen about the deaths. I'm actually kind of surprised that you've returned without like tears streaming. I'm disappointed, but okay. No,
me so well.
No, that felt like the right ending to me, because I think that finding each other allowed them both to let go. But perhaps more importantly, it felt to me like it gave Rose permission to pass the baton on to the next generation. I mean, I guess the next generation would have been her daughter, Josephine, but Hope, Josephine had passed away. So Hope, I think that Rose lived with a lot of guilt and had a lot of unfinished business. And I think Hope helped to resolve those things for her. So I think that she was able, so it wasn't just about finding Jacob. I think it was about realizing that she didn't have to feel that guilt. And that she was allowed to embrace who she was. She didn't have to hide anymore, especially from herself. I think she was hiding most of all from herself. And I think that when those things came to be, there was a peace, and a peace that kind of settled over her. And I think that when that peace settled over her, one of the things that she realized she was allowed to do was to let Hope live, was to let hope be, was, she didn't have to be there to save hope. I think part of the rest of her life was just this penance for what she thought she had done so terribly wrong. And I think in the end, she realized that wasn't a burden she had to carry. And so she had belief in hope's future now too, if that makes sense. So it was, to me, it felt like the perfect ending, because Hope not only had that permission from her grandmother to kind of move into the future, but she also saw that love stories can have happy endings, even when they're not the endings that you think they're going to be, or even when life gets in the way, or even when the obstacles seem insurmountable. Love can still triumph in the end. So sorry though that I killed them off. I know that's really mean of me.
That was beautiful. I might have to go.
The murderous.
I was a
Kristin
bucket of
Harmel.
tears.
Sorry.
I know I may have to go off screen myself a go. No, but it was. I got that feeling too, though, that sad as it was, then they were reunited, and
Yeah.
things had not righted themselves, but things were at peace. And it allowed Hope to realize what her legacy was.
Yeah, the good way to put it. And I mean, that is also, it's life though, right? I mean, there's everything has to have an ending. Everything, you know what I mean? Like they couldn't live to 150. You know what I mean? Like
No, absolutely.
Their story would have had an end at some point, and this was a way to kind of tie it up in a way that, I think they both died happy. You know what I mean? Like they both died knowing they'd found the love of their life, and that person had lived a full life, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
It sticks. All of your books stick with us.
Mm-hmm.
And this one does too.
Thank you. That's really kind.
We cannot let you go without telling us about your new book coming out, The Paris Daughter. June 6th.
I know.
Pre-orders available now.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thanks for that plug. Yeah.
Vanna,
Good job, Lisa.
Yes, exactly.
My Vanna moment.
Vanna White. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, I have to tell you this thing, but okay. Yes. So the Paris Daughter. Sorry, you just reminded me when you said Vanna. But the Paris Daughter is the story, and I think I've probably used this exact phrase describing it before. I think I'm still trying to kind of figure out what I'm going to say about it, but it's about two mothers, two daughters, an Allied bomb that falls where it shouldn't in the suburbs of Paris, which was really a thing. I mean, that happened obviously all over. When you're trying to bomb the enemy, you wind up bombing neighborhoods of civilians also. So when this bomb falls in this suburb of Paris, which was a real thing, it was on an April Sunday in 1943. This neighborhood's destroyed, and obviously lives are lost along with it. So not all of our main characters survive. And the one who returns from where she had been in hiding comes back to find that her daughter is gone, and the woman who was caring for her has completely vanished. And so there's no trace of her. There's no answers about what happened to her daughter. She just knows that her daughter's died, and there's a headstone for her daughter in the cemetery. So she's kind of living with that grief and pain. She's questioning what motherhood is. Who is she without being a mother to this child? And then the story picks up 17 years later in New York in 1960, when a chance meeting sets the two main characters, the two mothers, on a collision course again. And it leads to the unraveling of these mysteries that started on that sunny April day 17 years earlier.
Ooh.
I need to come up with
Cannot wait for that one.
But that's just kind of that's the general pitch.
The Paris Daughter. I'm holding it up again because a couple of people asked me to. So there it is.
I've got it somewhere here. Yep. Wait,
and then we've got two quick questions. One, we had a couple people ask where can they get signed copies of A Sweetness of Forgetting, the new edition, and then also where can they get signed copies of The Paris Daughter as well.
So
Pre-order.
I believe that that Oxford Exchange in Tampa and Writer's Block in Orlando both still have signed copies of The Sweetness of Forgetting, the new edition. And Foxtail in Atlanta has signed book plates that are inside the book. So all three of those stores have signed copies. The Paris Daughter, there will be signed copies at Writer's Block. And if you're going to pre-order from Writer's Block, just make sure you put in your notes now that you would like a signed copy. I know they have a section where you can write a note. So just make sure that's in your notes if they send you a signed one. But I almost always sign all of their original, like whatever they get at the beginning, like the stock at the beginning, I sign all of that. So if you order now, you should get a signed one from Writer's Block. It's also, of course, part of that package, that Friends and Fiction Firsts package through Booktown. So if you order that package with all 4 of our books, all 4 first edition books will be signed by, each of us will sign our own books. I'm sure I'll sign books at Oxford Exchange. And then I will be going on probably like a 10 to 12 city tour that I haven't announced yet, but there will be signed books available at all those places I'm going. And I anticipate posting that tour schedule for June, no later than the beginning of April. So, but if you want to
Any
be
hints on a city that you may come to?
I can't say yet.
Sure.
Not least of all because we haven't solidified everything yet. So I will tell you I'm hoping to make it to your city. I'd really like to, but
I'm gonna come find you somewhere. So
I will be easy to find on this one. I think I'll be doing a whole bunch. So yeah, so that should be up by early April. But if you want to be absolutely positive that you're ordering a signed copy, Writer's Block or the Friends and Fiction First box at Booktown, or I'm sure Oxford Exchange will be signing books too. So those are probably 3 safe bets.
Yay. Time went by way too quick with you.
Because I talk
We can
too
talk
much.
to you forever. No,
I know.
Blah, blah, blah.
We love chatting with you, and we're just so thankful for you.
Thank you.
Thanksgiving week,
Thank you.
and
Thank
this book
you.
was perfect.
Thank you. I'm
So-
thankful for you
Phenomenal.
guys too. I'm really thankful. I'm thankful to you, Lisa. I'm thankful to you, Brenda. I'm thankful to all the Friends and Fiction official book club members out there. It's we talk about it all the time. We feel such support from you guys. We love you guys. We feel like, we do know the 2 of you, but even though like a lot of the book club members we haven't met, we feel like we know them. It's just it's a really special community, and we all feel really fortunate to be a part of it.
It really is. I'm so grateful. I'm
Me
so
too.
grateful for this whole community.
Me too.
Me too.
And I'll echo my thanks. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Kristin,
you.
and have
Thanks
a
for
wonderful
having me.
Thanksgiving week.
You guys too. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh. I was like, what's happening here?
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the after show.
Yes, because we have still a few things to talk about that we didn't have time for, because it is always such a fascinating discussion.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
And I said at the beginning, well, I blew the beginning when I just started laughing at myself because I was trying to confirm. So here's a little behind the scenes for you guys. When we go live and I'm talking, I'm also trying to confirm that we're actually live on Facebook on the book club page to make sure that everything's going right. And right when I did that, there was this weird pop-up on the top of the Facebook page, and it was like a cow with a hat on. And I'm like, what is this?
Well, that would be a little distracting.
And I was like, I still didn't know if we were live. I just kept talking. And then I waited. Once you started reading her bio, I could confirm. But I was like, welcome to Friends of Fiction. It was like a cow. And it had like this sparkly hat on. And it even had like a little, I don't know. People post funny things, but I've never had a meme pop up at the top of the book club page when I was trying to confirm before. So It threw
That
me
is
off,
crazy.
needless to say. But we're
But
here.
rest assured we can have technical difficulties of every description. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I'm glad that happened with Kristin and, someone that we know well, and instead of an author that we maybe had just met a couple of minutes before. Because as I mentioned, she's my favorite person, and that's true.
Well, I just love this book too, and I could have talked for another 2 hours,
No.
about it and the lessons in there. And I don't care if Kristen said she was, only 30 when she wrote it. It was just still steeped in research and
It's
care.
unbelievable that that's her first historical fiction novel.
I know,
Like,
I know.
it's so well written and so well researched. It's like, what? And even though it was re-released, it's still, she could have released it for the first time today. And it's
Oh, I
just
know.
as good. It doesn't, it's so funny. It's just, she's just amazing. And I've learned so much from reading her books and Patty's books. I was not a history
Yes.
person. I hated history in high school. I was like English, creative writing. I didn't like history or, as you know, geography because I can't read a map.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
It's the truth, and it's funny because you keep trying to send them to me.
I keep trying to show you on maps where to go, what to do, but it just
This
doesn't.
is
It
like,
never
here's
makes.
a map, and I'm like, I don't know. It's green and there's white lines. That's a river. That's a street. Left, right, up, down. I don't care. Just tell
Just
me,
give me the
like,
GPS.
tell me a focal point. Like, turn left at McDonald's. Go down.
That's funny.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Patty's books too, because I did want to let everybody know that our next book discussion will be The Perfect Love Song with Patty Callahan Henry on Monday, December 9th. Not 9th, 19th. That's my opportunity to blah, blah. December 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern. What else we got going on, Lisa?
Well, we have a happy hour coming up on December 8th. It's a Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern with special guest Mary Kay Andrews, which is going to be a hoot. And we will announce our February and March picks for next year. We've already announced January, which is Zibby Owens and Bookends. And that's on January 24th, I believe. And then we will also give you guys details. We kind of gave our Friendsgiving friends a little sneak announcement, but for those that weren't live on Friendsgiving, it was not recorded and it was very intimate and fun. We will be hosting the 2023 reading challenge on the book club page this year. So during our happy hour on December 8th, we will be giving some more details about that. And our amazing friend, Anissa Armstrong, is going to be heading it up again. The book guru, the reader. I don't know how she reads everything she does. Like, I think she has you know what it is? I figured it out. She has a twin. She has a twin.
Must be
because she works a full-time job. She travels all over everywhere in the US and goes to every book event known to man. She reads every book that comes out within a week that it comes out. And she still functions. And I mean, it's amazing. I need to tell me how you got the clone, Anissa. I need to know.
Yeah, we want to know because we want to read more books too.
I think she has a secret twin.
I think we found her out.
We did.
Well, we hope to see everybody at the happy hour and at our next month's discussion with Patty Callahan Henry. I'm really looking forward to that one too.
It's going to be fun. What are your plans for Thanksgiving?
Oh, my plans? Like, who else were you talking to? I don't know why you didn't say that. I'm going down to my friend and neighbor's house, Katie Ann's, for Thanksgiving. And I'm looking forward to
Nice.
it. And I'm in charge of the mashed potatoes.
Ooh. Me and my mom are going to go to my best friend's sister's house because her family's coming up from Florida. We're going to go there, and I'm going to be making my brandied cranberries that everybody loves.
Oh,
it will,
yum.
yep.
That sounds delicious. I really secretly wanted sweet potatoes as my assignment, but that's okay. I'm going to do mashed potatoes. That sounds like fun, Lisa.
Anissa said in the chat, I am a twin, possibly even a triplet.
That's funny. Yeah, we figured it out.
And to answer your question, Mindy, Zibby Owens, she's going to be January, and I believe it's January 24th at 7 p.m. Let me just look at the calendar.
Right now, but it's a different Monday.
Oh no, it's January. Yeah, it's January 23rd. Monday, January. Oh no. Wait, am I looking at the right year? Yeah. Monday, January 23rd at 7 p.m. We skipped a week because it was going to be on Martin Luther King Day. And we've always kind of ended up doing it on Martin Luther King Day. And we decided we'd push it back a week since there are 5 Mondays in January. So she will be on with us. It'll be our first nonfiction, starting off the new year with a fabulous nonfiction read. It's a great book. So,
all right. I know everybody's going to enjoy it. Well, I hope everyone has a fabulous Thanksgiving. Enjoy the day and the holiday. And of course, happy reading, everybody.
Yep. Happy reading. Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
PB&J out.